Hi, my name is Alyson Hall, and I'm a PhD student at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. I study seagrass ecology, particularly of seagrass meadows here in the Chesapeake Bay. My lesson is aimed at ninth grade or high school environmental science students and focuses on how seagrass meadows store carbon within their sediment and how this carbon storage potential can change between species. It also includes an extension activity that focuses on how climate change is impacting seagrass meadows here in the Chesapeake Bay. Seagrass meadows are formed by seagrasses or underwater marine flowering plants. They are the ecosystem's foundation species or building blocks. Seagrass meadows are considered to be blue carbon ecosystems globally, meaning they are ocean or coastal ecosystems, the blue in blue carbon, that store large amounts of carbon, helping sequester or take it out of the atmosphere. Seagrass meadows get a lot of attention for being a blue carbon ecosystem, especially when considering how we can help fight climate change. This makes the carbon storage of seagrass meadows an important area of study right now. In this lesson, students will learn about ecosystems that serve as carbon sinks and think about what role those ecosystems play in climate change. We will then introduce them to what seagrasses are, what seagrass species we have in the Chesapeake Bay, and why scientists are interested in studying the carbon storage of seagrasses. If you feel like your students need it, there are also slides to review global carbon sinks and fluxes and where seagrass meadows might fit in. When I measure the carbon storage of seagrass meadows, I use sediment cores, or tubes of sediment that I take from the meadow and bring back into the lab to measure how much carbon there is in my sample. In the field, we have to hammer these cores into the sediment, cap it to create suction, and then pull the core back out to get this cross section of sediment. Once I'm back in the lab, I'm able to use the percent carbon in the sediment to calculate something called a carbon stock, using the known volume of sediment that is in my core. Your students are going to do something very similar. These carbon cores act like how we might play with a drink, capping the end of a straw in order to catch liquid and being able to let it go whenever we want. It might be helpful to introduce your students to the idea of carbon cores by using something they're more familiar with, like this. In this lesson, your students will be taking their own cores and calculating carbon stocks of meadows of two different species of seagrass by counting the amount of carbon beads, green, versus sediment beads, brown. Through the worksheet, your students will review knowledge, write hypotheses, and measure and learn to calculate carbon stocks using the cores they took. They will then plot their results as a bar graph and compare the carbon storage between our two seagrass species. If you want to push your students, you can do the second worksheet or the extension activity. This allows the students to think even more like scientists and scale up their measurements of carbon stocks from square centimeters to square meters, and finally to the entirety of the lower Chesapeake Bay. Students will think about how a system like the Chesapeake Bay might change over time, and how a change in dominant seagrass species can impact the carbon storage potential of the entire estuary. I hope through this lesson, you and your students fall in love with seagrass meadows and understand why sediment can be so exciting. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. I love to connect with students and educators. Thank you so much for watching.